I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
CJ. Big Money CJ. I don't need to go through all the AKAs like I did last week, but it is an absolute pleasure and an honor to be in the same room as you recording a podcast.
Yeah, bud.
What's up, dog?
There we are.
Good
there
to see
we
you,
are.
big man. And I see you with the Dang It shirt, too.
Yes, sir.
The Steve Dangle shirt.
Yeah, I went with the, I wanted the collage of Steve's.
Yeah.
I quite appreciated this one and made that order. Put a little money in Sportsnet's pocket and give my man Steve some love.
That's how you have to see it, right? You can't be like, oh, man, here's Sportsnet. It's Steve Dangle. You're supporting your friend.
Yeah, well, I assume he gets a cut of it. I didn't ask him, but I mean... Surely they didn't put the man's image on a shirt and not give him a little love.
Yeah. If anyone knows whether or not or how much of a cut Steve Dangle gets from getting these shirts, please let us know. We would just really much like to know that. But I'm sure everyone at home would like to know more about some of the stuff we want to talk about on this in-person edition of the CJ Show.
Well, I've already learned something today.
Oh, okay. All right.
That I didn't know.
Okay, all right.
SDPN memes doesn't work here.
Let's talk about it. Yeah. I know their name is Aaron. That's all I know about them. And they make for people who know about SDPN memes, it's an account.
It's 24/7.
Yeah, it's like a Twitter and Instagram account that essentially makes memes of everyone on the SDPN essentially. So
right.
it's either the Dangle podcast or our podcast we get memed.
But I'll be up at like 12:15 watching a Kings Ducks game. And I'll get tagged in something. I'm like, what is this? And it's like SDPN memes just like churning it out like in the middle of the night. Like, it's wild. I assumed it was maybe Jesse. It was a bit of a mystery to me, but I assumed, this person or people worked here.
Jesse works hard, but like, I don't know if he works that hard.
Right.
Like, that's a lot of effort to put together like memes on like you doing the hotline bling dance. And yeah, I don't know if you saw that. I think I sent you that video.
Yeah.
That's hilarious to me, by the way. That's amazing. So yeah, big shout out to Aaron.
There's a little stick tap there.
Absolutely.
Even though it's not a stick tap day, but like this is a half tap on a Monday. We're bringing the big Monday energy. So thanks for all you do, Aaron.
Half tap to Aaron. But today is an Ask CJ day. And before we get to the end of the podcast, we'll get to questions that will be from Discord and on Twitter as well. And also, we're going to try not to get to the ones that were already asked in your Inside the NHL column, which you should check out on the Toronto Star. But we have a lot to get to today. I want to get to Connor McDavid. I want to briefly mention the coaching news with the Chicago Blackhawks and Jeremy Colliton losing his job. But I also wanted to mention Mike Babcock, whose name has resurfaced in the news off of a profile that was done on him on Sportsnet, written by David Singh. I'm not going to lie to you. Like I read the story that went out over the weekend. For those who care to read it, it basically follows him as he's doing his work with the University of Saskatchewan Huskies men's hockey team. A lot of people have been critical of it, saying it's essentially like a puff piece. And I saw the criticisms before I got into the story. And I have to admit, like I was reading it, I'm like, okay, when does he get to the stuff where he addresses all the bad crap that he said that ultimately led him to losing his job? We know with what happened with Mitch Marner. Johan Franzen has some really bad things. The former Detroit Red Wings.
Well, I don't know that stuff led to him losing his job, though.
Well, okay, that's fair. It's not fair to personify it like that.
Because Marner happened a couple seasons.
That's true.
This came out though after he lost his job.
That's very true. I should add that.
But I'm with you. Look, I see this two ways, right? And much like yourself, I'm a journalist. I've had to go on assignments. I have a ton of respect for David Singh. I worked with David a long time ago at the Canadian Press. We crossed paths at Sportsnet as well. And I think he's like a really conscientious, smart, caring journalist. But, when you're doing this assignment, there's no win there. Because it's pretty clear, in the last section of the story for anyone who did see it, he asked the pertinent questions of Mike Babcock, that need to be asked. And Mike, just doesn't appear to have switched his view on, what he told Pierre LeBrun at The Athletic, maybe a year ago now. Mm-hmm. Really anytime I've heard him speak to these issues in the last 2 years since he lost his job in Toronto, there's not a lot of reflection there. Like, I think it's pretty clear that it's his view and I'm speaking for him a little bit here without knowing for sure, but like it seems to be his view that he didn't do anything wrong. That, that he feels maybe he crossed the line slightly, but in an acceptable manner that, just happens in the nature of his job. And, I think we have to recognize that the coach-player relationship it can be an emotional one, right? I mean, they're, not to make a war reference here, but you're kind of in the heat of battle together in the intensity of a game. It can be a dangerous game. It certainly, a lot gets broiled up, I think, at ice level or in the dressing room level of an NHL arena that if you haven't been around it, there's a lot of off-color language used. There's a lot of sort of challenging and pushing each other because it's still a physical sport. Like I get, it's gone away from like the 80s sideshow stuff with a lot of just specialty fighters and all that kind of thing. But, you could get hurt in any game if you're in the NHL.
Yeah.
Like just straight up, the speed it's played at, you got to watch yourself. And so anyway, it does seem that Mike doesn't feel that he's, that he has anything to apologize for. And in a sense, that's fine. I'm not saying like I would like him to get to the point where he feels like maybe he's got to take a bit more ownership of that. But I guess we're at the stage where if he's not going to show that self-reflection or if he's not going to change that stance, I mean, maybe he just can't really be written about this way.
And to that point, maybe he's not necessarily deserving of a second chance in the National Hockey League.
I don't think he wants one.
That's interesting. Because I feel like a lot of other people would think that not only would he want that second chance, and maybe this has to do with how the NHL is and how professional sports is, that he could put himself in a position where a team might be interested in getting him. And I understand he has I don't know how much left he has on that contract with Toronto, which I'm sure, he probably doesn't want to lose out on whatever money he's still getting from that. But a lot of people, the seemingly the general thinking would be that he would position himself one day to get back in the National Hockey League.
Well, he spoke to the Washington Capitals when they hired Peter Laviolette at that point in time. I think other teams have felt him out on situations and gauged his interest. And my sense of where he's at, and I haven't asked him specifically about this, but knowing people he knows, is that he's probably done as an NHL head coach. Now, look, his Leafs deal expires at some point. This is a 1-year deal, he said, at the University of Saskatchewan. So this is kind of special circumstances that he's in U Sports this year and going back to his, where he grew up. And, a lot of it's tied to family. His wife's parents are getting quite elderly, and it gives them a chance to spend time with family. His son, Mike Babcock Jr., is on his bench. So, I think this is a one-off. Maybe after that, maybe he's like a consultant for a team, like we've seen Scotty Bowman or Cliff Fletcher. A lot of sort of senior hockey people are there just to offer, to offer some of their perspective. Maybe we see him do that. But, the more time goes on and the more I've dug into this, the more I get this idea that he's done as an NHL head coach.
I just want to lift a couple quotes from Mike Babcock from this Sportsnet piece with regards to Johan Franzen. And forgive me, I don't remember the specifics of the relationship between those two players, but Johan Franzen essentially does not have a lot of nice things to say when it comes to Mike Babcock.
And he's dealt a lot post-career. Like he's had some issues.
Absolutely. The quote I was able to lift from Mike Babcock when it comes to Johan Franzen: "If I've done something wrong, I have to own that," he says. "But I'm good with my life. I'm good with my moral fiber. I'm good with my family." Like to your point about the fact that you don't seem to think that Mike Babcock essentially wants to apologize for some of the stuff that he did. Like I read that and I'm like, oh, okay, well, if I've done something wrong, like you seem to believe that you did not do anything wrong, and that's already a red flag. That's a little bit weird to me. And that's Johan Franzen. And for Mitch Marner,
well, it's not clear to me though. Like, has he apologized somewhere else? Like,
I don't know.
Because he's acknowledging in there that, yes, if I've done something wrong, I've got to live with that. I've got to own that, whatever.
Yeah, but that also implies that
have you owned it?
Yeah, but that also implies you don't know if you've done anything wrong. If I've done something wrong, that means you did something and you went about doing it, and you may not necessarily think what you did was wrong. And maybe other people bringing it to your attention, you're like, oh, did I do something wrong? Like that doesn't scream accountability.
Mike is a complicated guy, man.
Yeah, he is.
He was a Leafs coach, I think, for 5 seasons or parts of 5 seasons. In those 5 seasons, my job at Sportsnet was I literally went to every Leafs game, not on Saturday because I was in studio on Saturday doing hockey night.
Right.
And literally every practice. Like, I mean, basically, if they were available to the media 190 times a year, I was there like 170 of them for 5 years, like every year. Anyway, I'm getting to the point here. So before the last game he coached as Toronto's coach, they were in Vegas for 3 days before the game. They flew there after a Saturday night game and they didn't play till Tuesday. So on the Sunday, there's a Flames Golden Knights game in the afternoon. And, I was in Vegas too to cover the team. And so I go to the game and Mike's at the game and other Leafs people are there and it's the first intermission. And so we're in the press box. And, in that situation, especially because the heat was up, they'd gotten spanked the night before in Pittsburgh. So it was in the air that his job wasn't great. And probably at the best of times, I wouldn't be running over to him. You know what I'm saying? And it's because we're sort of bumping each other. Anyway.
Right.
So he comes over and he's like, so what do you do?
What?
And I was like,
that happened?
Well, but I have to say, like, because that could come across, it wasn't, I didn't take it like he was being a jerk. It actually sounded like he was interested.
Okay.
But he's like, why are you here? And I was like, well, I'm a reporter. I cover the NHL and, you see me at your games, but, I do cover the other teams and things that are going on. I'm in a city where there's an NHL game being played. And he's like, oh, I didn't, I kind of got the feeling like he didn't know who I was. And I'm not saying he followed everything I do, because that wouldn't be very productive in his job with any media member. Like, I don't think, but it would be impossible that he didn't at least know who I was. Like,
or at least
literally
not recognize you.
Right. But like he did recognize me, he came over, but then, it was just such a strange interaction. And then he proceeded to tell me a few things going on with the team, which was sort of interesting, because it's sort of like he starts off by saying, like, I'm not feeding your ego too much. I'm not even saying I know who you are. But then he's like, hey, but here's some things going on. And then, anyway, then he got fired. I mean, we always had a fine enough relationship. Honestly, it kind of typifies it though. Like I could never figure out where he's coming from. And I only relay that story or that anecdote,
right?
Because like I'm reading these quotes or hearing them from you, and I'm like, I don't really get it. Like,
and your reactions here are going off only one of the two quotes that I was going to read, and that's off the Johan Franzen quote.
What's the second one?
So the one I pulled on Mitch Marner, he references the story where when Mitch Marner was like a rookie or young player in the Leafs organization, Babcock asked Marner for a list of players and ranking their work ethic. And then he showed the list to the players. I think that was the going story.
Yeah.
And Babcock says, that's a complete farce the way that it's talked about and the way that it happened. It didn't happen like that. I asked the kid to do something. He did it. The next player came in, and then there's ellipses. And then he says, so did I ever try to put Mitch Marner in a tough place? Mitch Marner played great for Mike Babcock. And not like Mitch Marner played great for me. It's Mitch Marner played great for Mike Babcock. Like he's third personing himself here.
Right. And again, I don't
self-referencing, whatever.
But I don't get why he's doing that.
I don't get that either.
But it's that there's a reason. But I can't tell you what it is. Like I would guess if I had a good guess, I wouldn't be afraid to throw it out there as an idea. I don't get it. Like, in fact, he has a quote from the next day after that we had that thing in the Vegas press box, and he said something like, I'm going to continue to bet on, I've always bet on Mike Babcock. I'm going to continue to bet on Mike Babcock.
Bet on himself.
But he said that literally the day before he was fired or 2 days before he was fired by the Leafs. Yeah, look, he's got a tremendous amount of self-belief, but anyway, I don't understand I've never used my name in the third person as like a way to answer a question. Maybe as a joke somewhere along the line, but never like in a serious way. So I don't know what he's doing there.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused, and I don't have the relationship that you might have had with Mike Babcock. As far as I know, I've never been in a scrum. I mean, I don't even think, I'm trying to remember, when was the year he got fired? I forget the year he got fired, but I was not in
2019. November 2019.
In any case, I've never been in a scrum with Mike Babcock. I've never met the person. I understand he means a lot. He meant a lot to the University of McGill in Montreal. A lot of people like to bring that up because of the McGill tie, but I don't know anything about the dude. But to read these quotes and to read that,
well, he was unquestionably the best coach in the NHL for a period of time.
I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that, and I acknowledge,
which doesn't
the Olympic
excuse
stuff. No, it doesn't.
Any behavior. No. I'm just saying. But like, he earned professionally the love he was getting, and he earned getting the largest contract of his peers.
I get it.
But now we're seeing a different side of it.
That's what I'm saying. And reading this stuff here and reading the stuff in the story, I don't get the sense of a man who realizes that he hurt people, he affected people in a negative way, and didn't take the advantage of the platform afforded by David Singh. Say what you want about the fact that the story was done. He could have easily used that as an opportunity to be like, hey, you know what? I made mistakes along the way. I don't know if I have an opportunity left in the National Hockey League, or maybe I don't even necessarily want one anymore, but I realize I did what I did with it, and I'm sorry and whatever. Like when you're in a situation like he can't be so aloof and dumb to not know that people realize that, yes, he did deserve the love that he got as a head coach, but he did some pretty crappy. It seemed as if he did some pretty crappy things, and people are asking questions about that. And hey, maybe he's right. Maybe the Mitch Marner thing didn't go exactly as what was personified in the media, but also
he has an opportunity here to clarify then what's not like what's the missing part of the story maybe that's being lost, or
that's it. Like add those details, like add that and at least try to just be like, hey, you know what, man, I messed up. Like do that, it's, even if it's not Marner, like Johan Franzen, who in his day, one of the really good players in the National Hockey League, who seems like he's in a pretty dark place right now, had all those bad things to say about Mike Babcock. And I'm willing to bet there are a whole bunch of other NHL players who don't necessarily have the nicest things to say about Mike Babcock.
And do you know where this is tricky, though?
Acknowledge that.
Let's be real.
Sure.
There's a lot of players out there that didn't like their coach.
Yeah.
The same way we might have a lot of friends in our industries that don't like their boss. Like it's not a job that you're there to be liked, but the question is, how often did his behavior cross the line, or the way his treatment of these people? And it's really hard to know. I mean, we have these two stories that have been told by the players themselves. So obviously they felt like there was some crossing of the line there. There's probably more that just are quiet. I mean, you've had Mike Commodore quite loudly and vociferously.
You want to try that again?
No, I'm just going to move on. But
that's
everyone else quite emphatically question Mike Babcock. Here's how I think this is going to go.
Sure.
Because as I said, I got a lot of respect for David Singh. This story got skewered online. I suspect we're just going to see Mike not be back in the NHL, and you're going to see fewer and fewer to no more stories like this, unless, Mike Babcock gets to a point where he wants to say a little bit more or show some concern. Because right now it doesn't seem to be there, and I just don't think it's worth media outlets' time to keep going back to this well.
Let me ask you one more question about this. We mentioned the fact that, maybe few and fewer outlets are going to go to Mike Babcock because he might not have more to say than what he said. This kind of crossed my mind. The fact that he didn't necessarily use this as an opportunity to apologize for some
he doesn't think
stuff.
He needs to apologize.
Here's the thing. What if an outlet goes to him next time, and then that's when he tries to apologize for that stuff? Isn't that going to come across as disingenuous? Isn't that going to come across as, well, wait a minute, now you're doubling down on this stuff? Well, now you've stopped doubling down and now you're apologizing? Now you want an opportunity in the National Hockey League? That's what he wants.
Depends how... But here's the thing. I don't think he wants to be back in the league, man. And I don't think that he feels like he needs to clear up his legacy or anything like that. Like, I think, there's lots of reasons not to like what he said here.
Right.
But I'll say this. I don't think he's... Like, I think that's what he believes. Like, I don't think he's doing anything. And so, like, maybe he does have a legitimate change of heart. Like, that does happen. Maybe there will be self-reflection there. I think there's still a way for him to present that publicly, but he's got to get there on his own. And I see less appetite from a media standpoint to go back to that well again and again and again if he's going to give sort of the same version of events that don't satisfy anyone.
That's what it looks like. But yeah, you can't be in this game and just say, all right, I'm sorry, you have to put in the work. And I don't know if Mike Babcock is willing to put in that work. I mean, and that's fine if he wants to just feel as if he didn't do anything wrong and he doesn't want to be in the NHL. He just wants to live his life and just be close to his family. That's fine. And you know what? I'll take your word for it. Maybe he doesn't necessarily want to go back to the NHL. But it is just a little weird to see. And I have no issue with David Singh. There's no beef with David Singh. David Singh just tried to do his job. But yeah, this Mike Babcock story, it was good that we talked about it, but he didn't say anything that leads me to believe, even if he didn't want to go back to the NHL, that he realized he did anything wrong. And I know he doesn't strike me as a guy,
but he doesn't strike me as a guy that has ever doubted himself. I think
you can not have doubt in yourself and also be a good person.
Of course,
you can be a good person and reference yourself in the third person. You could easily be right now, be like, "Hi, everybody, I'm Big Money CJ," and everyone would just laugh at that because people know you're a good person. You're not Mike Babcock,
but everyone makes mistakes. Like
everyone makes mistakes. I get that.
Well, this is where I'm saying, like, I'm willing to accept. I mean, look, this guy coached what 1,500 NHL games, something like that. Like, of course, across that amount of time. Anyone coaches 1,500 games, you probably said something you didn't mean to.
I'm sure.
Or did something you didn't mean to, like maybe came out the wrong way, whatever. Like that's sort of my understanding of the Marner situation. I think that it was not the way it was intended to go down, and it didn't go down right. And the one thing that has been said at the time is that both Lou Lamoriello, who was the Leafs GM, and Mike Babcock apologized to Marner at the time. Like in the moment, for sure, they acknowledged that a mistake was made. Like that's why I don't really get why he's still. Anyway, we should move along because we're going in circles here. But
we are.
I do think we're seeing the end of this guy's career came quicker than I would ever guessed. I would have always guessed, first of all, he was going to last longer in Toronto, and I would have guessed he would have another place to coach. But the world's changing, and I don't think he's changing, and here we are.
One thing I'll mention before we move on to the next thing, something I'm going to try to do a lot earlier in the shows, and I'm going to try to make sure I do a lot more frequently. Subscribe to the podcast. It's just good to do.
Give us a rating.
Yeah, do that.
Slap a 5 on there.
Yeah, slap a 5.
We're here. It's Monday. Yeah. We're bringing it.
Exactly. I just want to, because I know I do it at the end. It's just good to just do at different points in the podcast, or at least earlier, so that way, SEO and all that stuff. But subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe to the YouTube page. You also mentioned the Calgary Flames while we were talking about Mike Babcock. I mentioned something. Something was mentioned at the end of the SDP with regards to a story of yours in Calgary. We may or may not get to that before the end of the show. I just want to kind of tease that out there. Connor McDavid. We have to talk about Connor McDavid and ask CJ.
How honest do we want to be on this podcast?
I mean, this is your podcast. You could be as honest as you want.
We're in the same room.
Yeah, you could be as honest as you want.
We got Jesse Blake here off camera.
Yeah, Jesse Blake. Shout out Jesse Blake, who is here, and he insisted on not being on camera, and 2, not saying anything.
He's the mystery man in the room.
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah.
But yeah, okay, I can't lie in front of you two. We'll get to that later.
All right, we'll get to that later.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julian McKenzie, and I'm here to talk about Manscaped. I had an idea to show you a whole bunch of these Manscaped products, but Jesse told me that if I started showing them, this might end up being an X-rated ad. So just to be safe, I'm just going to read the copy that's been presented in front of me. Thanks, Jesse. Guess what, fellas? The boys are buzzing because hockey is back. Want to know what else is buzzing? The Lawnmower 4.0 from our friends at Manscaped. They are the global leaders in male grooming, trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. Wow. Don't get chirped this year for having a Jumbo Joe bush below the waist. Join the Manscaped movement for all of your hairy grooming needs and get 20% off free shipping with the code Chris21 at manscaped.com. Mind you, this ad was as PG as possible, and I still had to read the phrase Jumbo Joe bush below the waist. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for keeping us on the straight and narrow. And be sure to buy Manscaped products because they're good. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. If you want a 10% discount on the next session you ever want to do from BetterHelp, go to betterhelp.com/Johnston for that 10% discount. If you haven't heard about it, they are a customized online therapy service that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist so that you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Why invest in everything else and not your mind? This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Chris Johnston Show fans, you can get yourself 10%. I know I said it off your next session. It's actually off the first month that you use BetterHelp.com. So go to betterhelp.com/Johnston for a 10% discount off the first month that you use their service. It's fall, which means football. It's football time. It's in full swing. Gotta love football. And for many of us, there's no way to better enjoy these games than by having some skin in the game. And that's why BetMGM remains the exclusive betting partner of The Athletic. And as a fan of The Athletic, you can bet $10 to win $150 plus a free 3-month subscription or extension to your subscription with The Athletic when you bet with BetMGM using our promo code. Just sign up at betmgm.com and use the promo code The Athletic Pod. That's all in one word at checkout to take advantage of this special offer from the king of sportsbooks. The king of sportsbooks is a pretty good title. That's bet $10 to win $150 plus 3 months free from The Athletic at betmgm.com using the promo code The Athletic Pod. Visit betmgm.com for terms and conditions.
21 years of age or older to wager. Arizona, Colorado, Washington, D.C., Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia only. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Washington, D.C., Nevada, Wyoming, and Virginia, 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-GAMBLER in Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Call or text the Tennessee Red Line 800-889-9789 in Tennessee, or call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana.
I want to just ask you for your thoughts on the Chicago Blackhawks and their firing of head coach Jeremy Colliton, who I think was one of the younger coaches in the National Hockey League, but just did not seem to get any bit of tangible success while behind the bench. And we all know how bad they've been this year. They have a 2-9-2 record. I know they won in overtime the other night, but Jeremy Colliton and his time is done in Chicago. Just wondering your thoughts on that.
It feels like a mercy firing with, one win out of the gates, everything that's gone on in that organization, which I don't think is directly tied to this decision, but
no,
they need to, there's a deep cleaning coming to that organization. They're still looking for a full-time general manager. I know Kyle Davidson's there now as the interim GM. He made this call, which is interesting that he had the power to do that. Sometimes guys, run a team on an interim basis for a month or 2 months and you're basically just keeping the lights on, making sure everyone's expenses get filed the right way. You know what I mean? Because there is a practical part of that job that isn't just making major decisions that we critique on a podcast. But Kyle Davidson obviously has some power there. But, for Jeremy Colliton, I just feel like he was never given a chance. Truly, talk about being put in a position to fail. He replaced Joel Quenneville at the end of a fairly close to dynastic run for that team. If maybe not a full dynasty, pretty darn close to a dynasty.
He did have that, yes.
And so you're taking the ship over. It reminds me a little bit of Jeff Blashill in Detroit. He took over from Mike Babcock when it was clear that team was losing all its superstar players and it was going to be a period of time before they got relevant again. And you're just there in the meantime, kind of looking bad.
Like a placeholder.
Well, and the stink of what's happening gets attached to you, even though I don't know that there's a coaching issue there. To me, he wasn't given a fair shake. And this past offseason was a disaster for Chicago. I mean, there's no other way to put it. They had started a rebuild, right? They're picking players like Kirby Dach right up at the top of the draft. They do have some other nice young players. Alex DeBrinket's really come along. I think that there's a reason to hope for the future, but then they go out and trade for Seth Jones and give him a massive extension. And let's leave apart for the moment that Seth Jones has struggled mightily out of the gate. Because even if he was playing well, I would argue that it was the wrong player at the wrong time. What about where they're at today suggested to you that we're a major defensive piece away from being back in contention mode? I get that there's probably some stress there because you have Patrick Kane getting pretty close to the end of a contract.
Yeah. Jonathan
Toews in the same spot. And so the dream is you want to do what Boston did, right? They had a first set of cup runs with Bergeron and Zdeno Chara and David Krejci and all those guys. They fell back a bit. They got, Charlie McAvoy high in the draft, Jake DeBrusk, a few other players. And then they had a second, set of runs where, they didn't win a Stanley Cup, but they got to Game 7 in 2019 against St. Louis. And, we're certainly a team that could have won another cup. And so that's the ideal thing. You managed to keep those guys as career-long Bruins and gave them two sort of waves of contention. I understand wanting that in Chicago, but it wasn't there. They just don't have enough. And so I think that they have a roster construction issue, not a coaching issue. But you get to a certain point and the season was spiraling away as it was. And, Jeremy Colliton, you're right. I think he's 33, 34.
Yeah, he's not that.
He's
old.
younger than me. Yeah. I know that much. And I only highlight that to say, I actually won't be surprised if this guy does coach in the NHL again.
Okay.
But it might take a time. I actually look at guys like Bruce Cassidy, who's in Boston now, Mike Sullivan, both those men had a really early coaching experience in the NHL, had to go back to the AHL, had to pay their dues again, be NHL assistant coaches before getting a second chance. I mean, I actually think there's a lot to like about Jeremy Colliton as a coach, but it wasn't working for anyone in Chicago. And so the move gets made. Derek King actually is a great story in his own right. Has been a career-long coach, been a lot of hard miles on him in the AHL as a coach. He played in the NHL too, but from what I've gathered, I don't know Derek personally, but there's a lot of people out there rooting for him, and he gets the rest of the season, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because maybe he can turn things around in a short enough frame where they're like, okay, well, this is the guy to keep leading us. And I do think we'll hear from Jeremy Colliton again, but it's going to be tough. He's not going to be rumored in the next coaching, rumor. I don't think it's going to It's going to take some rehabilitation, maybe a step back. He coached in Sweden before coming to North America. Maybe he goes back to Europe. I mean, he's going to have options, but as I say, a mercy firing, I know he wasn't happy about it, but I bet a couple days from now, he'll be able to go like, all right, well, that's no longer my problem. He gets paid through the end of next season. Let's build towards the next thing.
Okay, I think that's enough. We can go in on the Chicago Blackhawks. I want to talk about Connor McDavid. I want to talk about
Connor who?
Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid, or McJesus, as some people like to
McMoses, I saw someone call him parting the seas there.
That's actually a really good reference. I like that. So I've seen the goal he scored against the New York Rangers probably about 20, 25 times.
Right.
SDPN memes, funny enough, I'm sure has made plenty of meme with that, and enough people have as well.
They might have made it a meme before the goal even happened. Like, Aaron's on top of stuff.
You can just make a meme with Connor McDavid off the face that he made after he scored. And that might arguably be, if not the coolest thing, like the second coolest thing about what happened. Like, he couldn't even believe what happened against the New York Rangers, the time, the place, everything. Like, for you and what you've seen of Connor McDavid, like, where does that rank in terms of like the best goals he's ever scored?
It's number one for me.
Me too.
And I was in the building when he scored the goal where he posterized Morgan Riley.
Oof.
And that was a
Dummied him.
pretty sick goal.
That
and
was
like the
amazing.
way it is like he bent time to his own thing. Like just the way he moved, it was really phenomenal goal. But splitting through four guys. I mean, it's like Mario Lemieux-esque, and that's going to be a dated reference for you, but you've probably seen the goals.
I've
right,
seen
where
the
he's,
goal.
It's if you've ever been to the building in Pittsburgh, they actually made a statue outside of Mario splitting through the D to score that goal. Like, borrow from that, Edmonton. I mean, we're not building statues yet for Connor, but when you do eventually, like you could have worse ones than this one. And I know it's game 10 of the regular season, whatever it is, not a game of consequence. It's not a Stanley Cup winning goal or something, but I think people will remember that one forever. And just the idea he would circle up, wait for Jesse Puljujarvi to get onside, and see four white sweaters clustered in the middle of the ice where, as opponents, you're trying to force the plays away from your goaltender and you just go right through it. Like, that's insane. And then, the fact there's 3 minutes left, he ties the game on that play. They come back and win. They were down 3 in that game. I have to say, because I know that this take might not age well, but I think the Oilers got something going on. And I don't just mean the hot start. And I know that there's problems with that blue line.
Right.
And I know that it's hard to see Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen carrying a team to a Stanley Cup. So I recognize this isn't a perfect team, but like those guys are so good, him and Draisaitl. And I know playoff hockey's different, and I know they never call penalties on them and all that stuff. I know we've seen a version of this before, but like they're getting better. And it's the highlight reel nature of that goal. Like, that's why you brought up the topic. But I mean, if we look at their start to their season, it's like bananas. It's
incredible.
Like, I think he's almost at 160 points now for his last 82 regular season games. Like, we haven't seen, nobody has done this in 25 years. Like this is as close to Mario Lemieux in terms of just sheer point production that we've seen. And I'm still looking at that division after the Eichel trade. Like, I think Vegas is really, I'm not saying they won't make the playoffs, but that's a grind of a regular season for those guys because they're down so much talent. I just see an opportunity in the Pacific for Edmonton. It's working with Zach Hyman. Puljujarvi's like, he's come along. Like, they made some smart decisions in the offseason, and when you got two of literally the best players on earth, surely you can find a way. And so I think that all the hype is deserved for a goal like that, but I also think there should be a bit of hype about the Oilers, even though I know that they haven't gone on long playoff runs yet.
But I mean, as we're recording right now, 9-1-0 to start their first 10 games of the season. You do have every right to hype up the Edmonton Oilers. And funny enough, for the Golden Knights, where yes, they made the trade with Jack Eichel, and he won't be available to them until early next year. I think if you're the Vegas Golden Knights right now, just try to get everyone as healthy as you can and just hope to make the playoffs at this point. And if they're going to have to worry about that, a team like Edmonton can just worry about winning the division, which would be a huge step for this team.
Right. And I think these guys, because they've been at it a while now, like they know every year is so important. But like Vegas is I think it's reasonable to bet that Vegas of next season is going to be better than whatever Vegas becomes this year. Just because they'll have a healthy Jack Eichel. They got some other things they can do. Like Vegas is going to be a contender, I think, for the next 5 years. in various forms. But this might be the one year where, depending, like if they get more injuries, like I almost had to play for them when they were here in Toronto last week. They were, I mean, they were so banged up that they were that desperate. So, I'm just kidding.
No, hey, look, when Vegas came into Montreal over the weekend, I was looking at them in the first period. They had, at one point in the second period, they were outshot 22-1. And I was like, this is it? Like, and I was sitting next to my colleague, Jesse Granger, and he was telling me, like, yeah, these guys are, like, banged up. He's looking at Shea Theodore. It's like, Shea Theodore is even looking himself. I was like, okay, like, I can't skate. Are they going to call me? Like, what's going on? Like, they're banged up.
So, like, I'm just saying they could suffer more injuries, of course. It's the nature of the sport. Like, this is going to be a really hard season for them to get through, to get into the playoffs. They can maybe do it, but anyway.
I think they can make the playoffs.
What it means for Edmonton, though, is that there's a freaking opportunity here. And I think those guys get it. And I love the Hyman signing in the short term. Like, the only concern there is what it looks like in year 5 or year 6 of that kind of contract, just because of the way he plays and his age. But, right now, like, they've beefed up their top 6. The 2 studs look even better than ever before. And, I think that they're going to trade for a goaltender.
Okay.
I think it's reasonable to link Marc-Andre Fleury to Edmonton. It's not the same as saying...
Oh, let's talk about that. You if you're Edmonton, you want Marc-Andre Fleury right now?
I'm not saying it's happening.
Oh, no, I'm not taking that as that.
But, look, we're at a point where Marc-Andre Fleury... And look, we have the agent provocateur who happens to represent Marc-Andre Fleury.
The agent provocateur, yes.
So,
yes.
Alan Walsh could probably speak to this better than me. But I think it's fair to say Marc-Andre Fleury at this stage of his career doesn't want to play on a 1-win Chicago Blackhawks team.
They have 2 wins.
2 wins. Pardon me.
No, it's all good.
But, he wants to win another Stanley Cup. And there's only so many teams that we could say are cup contenders that might need a goaltender. There's more than Edmonton, but there's not a lot of them. And I think there's enough smoke to just say, hey, look, it's like 2 people they're looking at each other across the room. Like, they don't know if it's going to happen, but I don't think it's not crazy to suggest that it might go that way. And, Edmonton has some cap issues to resolve. Like, I just think that they understand what this season means. And I see them trading for a D before the deadline, and I see them getting another goaltender. And that goaltender might be the reigning Vezina Trophy winner.
I'm just picturing Marc-Andre Fleury being at some party somewhere, and he sees Connor McDavid across the way, and he just stares longingly at Connor McDavid thinking, man, would I love to play on his team and not on this dust heap of a Chicago Blackhawks roster.
He can type up NHL.com and go like, 9-1-0. Like, that's... And they need a goaltender, right? Like, keep in mind, most teams that would ever be 9-1-0 aren't going to need him. Colorado could be a fit too. We'll see how things go with Darcy Kemper. Like I'm not saying it has to be Edmonton. I don't know if he'd want to come to Toronto, but we'll see what goes on with the Maple Leafs. Peter Mrazek's out for 4 more weeks. Jack Campbell's been great, but I think that there's a scenario there, and Pittsburgh has long been like, everybody seems to want a reunion with the Penguins and Fleury before the end of his career, and it doesn't have to happen this season. Maybe he plays 1 more year and signs back there, kind of completes the storybook. But he'll probably have other places, I guess, is what I'm saying, that might be a fit. But the Oilers might look pretty good with number 29 between the pipes.
You know what's also good? The fact that the Oilers are doing as well as they are, and the Flames are like right behind them, just breathing behind their necks at 7-1-3. They've had a really good start as well.
Biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, because I thought they'd be a middle of the pack team in that division. I think a lot of people were dreading a Daryl Sutter led team, even though his track record suggests he's still a good coach. He's taken teams that were kind of on the downslide and picked them up and made them look good. And he's done that with the Calgary Flames so far. So if we get another I
picked them to win the North Division last year.
I remember that.
Like, I was high on them. I remember that.
Yes,
they bit me.
Yes, they did.
So then
so you don't trust them.
Well, they've had the same core in place for 7-8 seasons, and they've yet to go on a long playoff run. They're not bad players, and Johnny Gaudreau's having a great start to the season.
Elias Lindholm too.
Lindholm is a stud, and they got him, I think, for less than $5 million on the cap. Like, he's like, that's great value. Andrew Mangiapane, who I know we talked about a little bit, getting on Team Canada's radar out of nowhere. He's making 2.5 or 2.8 or something like that. I think they've done a nice job with that team, honestly. But I just don't know what happened last year. And so because last year didn't work out, I just didn't expect too much. But you're right. Daryl Sutter has them playing a certain way. As long as the players buy in, and everyone there knows it's not full last dance. Like, I'm not saying all these guys are gone, but there's so many big contract decisions to be made there that, I think it's reasonable to think that there's a reason they ran on Jack Eichel.
Right.
I mean, it's because, you can't get 25-year-old first-line centers too easily, too often. But it's also because they have some big decisions to make on their core. I think they need to improve their core in the big picture. And so, they've, we might have a real Battle of Alberta playoff series, which sign me up for that.
Someone asked me on my Instagram, Battle of Alberta 7-game series, who wins? I said I would like to see Edmonton win. I'm not going to provide any insight as if I know what I'm talking about between those two teams because I haven't watched them nearly enough play against each other to see who would win. But I would like to see the Oilers win in a best of 7, in a Battle of Alberta best of 7.
The sport of hockey wins. The fans win.
I thought my answer was a cop-out. That is the cop-out of the year.
Dude, okay.
That is the cop-out of the year.
So it's November. It's November 8th.
Yes.
What am I doing making a hypothetical pick for a hypothetical playoff series? Like, I don't know who's playing net for the Oilers. I don't know what teams look like. I haven't seen them play each other enough.
All right.
I have nothing to base it on to say who would win that series.
Okay.
But I do think it would be awesome.
It would be awesome. And you're absolutely right. It's November 8th. We're not even at American Thanksgiving yet. We don't even know.
Right. That's like you saying, like, who's going to win a Carolina-Florida series in 2024? Like,
we might get a Carolina-Florida series in 2022.
We might. But my point is like, I can't guess. Like, I got enough time keeping the checkers on the board right now in the right order, let alone what's going to be happening 6 months from now.
Okay. I'm only bringing it up because Adam teased it on the SDP. And we all know how we feel about Adam.
Yeah. Well, we're in his house right now.
We are in his house right now.
Like,
thank you, Adam.
I'm worried we might be locked in the basement because we've been down here more than half an hour.
I don't know about that. I told him straight up at the end of the SDP that we were going to go longer than 30 minutes, and all he did was laugh,
cackle.
He has this like evil supervillain laugh.
Yeah.
I don't know if that has anyone ever brought that up to Adam Wild?
You can't be a big boss man like he is without having a little bit of that. I might destroy lives over this 30-minute time limit. We don't know.
I think I got that right.
Yeah.
Anyway, the reason why I bring up Adam is because he wanted us to tease or wanted you to bring up this story that happened to you in Calgary. And because it's your podcast, because your name is on the marquee, I'm just going to be your friend here and be like, you know what? You don't have to bring up the story if you don't want to. But if you want to, this is the platform to do it.
Well, I mean, look, if people come here for the real thing, so that you can't just be telling your good stories. Okay. Every once in a while, you got to be kind of the goat of a story. And I don't mean the greatest of all time. I mean, like the story doesn't make you look so hot.
Okay, so there's a story of you going to a game in Calgary with some friends.
Yeah, so here's the deal. My 3 oldest buddies that I grew up with all live in and around Calgary. And they've been out in Western Canada, I think since 2007, like a long time. And because of my job, I used to always go to Leaf games. And so probably 10 straight years, like actually 10 years, they would make one trip through the Western Canadian cities. I would be on that trip every year and I'd always see my buddies. They would always make sure to get tickets to the game in Calgary.
Yeah.
They'd go to the game. Usually I was working and then I'd meet them after for beer. Or if one of those times when I was there early, we'd have dinner the night before the game, whatever the circumstances are. And so the season that we had COVID first arrived. So I think this was, I didn't look it up, but it's somewhere in November, I think December 2019. It just happens that the Board of Governors meeting was that week in California out in Pebble Beach. Right. And Sportsnet wanted me to cover that. And so as a result, I wasn't on the whole Western Canada trip because I was going to have to miss some games of it. So Luke Fox went for Sportsnet instead of me. But as it turned out, I was able to fly from San Fran directly to Calgary and get there the day before that game and just go with my buddies. Like, this will be great. This is the first time I can actually go and fully participate, right? Like, because usually, sometimes it was rushed. You're covering a game, you're doing TV hits, whatever, and I like run to a bar and have drinks for an hour, and then it's last call, and then that's all I saw my friends.
Yeah.
And so great idea. So I go there and I stay at my buddy James Watt's house. He lives near downtown Calgary.
Shout out James.
James, been my boy for a long time. I could find a pretty embarrassing looking photo of him and I from when we were like 13, like acne, bad hair.
Are you going to expose him on the podcast?
Maybe a No Fear t-shirt or something like bad style, all those things. Man. But so I'm at James's house and then my other buddy, Kyle Duncan, and my third friend, Brandon Wainwright. And so Brandon, he lives out in Canmore now. And his job is he's the manager of a Fire and Flower.
Okay.
Which is a place that you can buy legal drugs.
That's a really interesting way of putting it.
Well, because here's the thing. I don't know. I don't dabble in that world.
Me neither.
But I didn't even like when I was young. Like I just don't know anything about it. Like I just has always been the kind of guy that likes to have a bunch of beers or whatever. So
you're a beer guy.
If I'm letting loose, you're
a beer guy.
Yeah, sort of. And so I don't know anything about that world.
Yeah.
My buddy Brandon, actually, who runs the Fire and Flower, doesn't drink at all and hasn't drank in a lot of years. Like we drank when we were younger, but 10, 15 years or more. But of course, he uses the product because, he doesn't just sell it.
Of course.
He believes in it. And so
he consumes it.
You can probably see where this is going. And
boy.
The day of the game comes and I'm with my oldest buddies. And you know how that feels like, it's like wrapping yourself in a warm blanket, seeing your friends and just being with your guys. And, it's great. And so we're going to walk down to the game, which it's maybe 30, 40-minute walk from James's house to the Saddledome. And so we're walking, and then Brandon's like, "Hey, have one of these." And I was like, "I don't know."
So it's an edible.
Yeah, or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
And we're on this walk, and he's like giving me stuff, and I'm just like,
edible.
Right. But, we weren't drinking. We were walking in public.
You weren't breaking and smoking.
We weren't breaking any laws.
No, it's fine.
But I literally don't ever do these things.
One, you had an edible. Two, you were not doing it on company time.
No, I wasn't working.
Yeah, sorry. So that should be made clear to everyone. You were not working while this happened.
Because I wasn't assigned to cover this trip, I had an ability to go there for 2 days.
You were just going as just a dude.
And, Brian Burke, shout out Burke, he hooked me up with tickets. But
shout out Brian Burke.
I had an actual ticket. It wasn't in the press box, nothing like that. There's no work aspect to the story, really.
Yeah, I just want that clear for everyone.
Except that I do work as a hockey journalist.
Yes.
And I'm heading to an NHL building, and I hadn't thought this all through. I wasn't wearing a hat or anything.
Oh, no.
And, I don't know, Brandon gave me a few of these things. I didn't know really what it was. And I honestly felt fine. I did feel fine. No. And the way it worked, we had 2 sets of 2 tickets. The tickets Berkey got us were honestly, they were sick. They were in, the, 8th row or something. Yeah. Really close to the ice. And so me and my buddy Kyle... we split up from the other 2 guys at a certain point when it's getting close to game time. We go down there and I started freaking out in my mind.
You had a bad trip.
I guess. I have no idea. God. But I'm not joking. We're walking down to these seats. Yeah. And I can hear people going there's Chris Johnson. There's Chris Johnson and stuff. I could hear people recognizing me.
Oh my God.
And I started getting so paranoid.
Oh my God.
And I'm saying to my buddy Kyle, I'm you might have to carry me out of here, man.
Yo.
I'm like, what happens if I fall on these stairs? Yeah. I just started thinking about all the bad things that could happen.
Tripping.
And I was like, what happens if...
You were tripping,
I'm like, what happens if something ends up on Twitter or...
Oh my God.
Whatever. And do you know what the funny thing is? Is because reflecting back on it...
Yeah.
Nothing
happened.
Well, and also nothing... I'm guessing anyone around us wasn't even aware, really.
No.
But I started getting crazy paranoid. And at the point...
I'm sorry.
Actually, at one point, we go to the intermission and I go to the public bathroom. And people started chanting my name in the bathroom. It was just all these drunk Leaf fans, right?
What the hell?
But they're like, CJ. And anyone who's ever been to the Saddledome, it's really narrow concourses, right? It's an older arena. It might be the oldest in the league, or certainly one of the oldest in the leagues now. Right. So there's just nowhere to hide. And, I think much like my buddies that live out there, I think a lot of Ontarians that live out west, they go to that one game because it's the one time the Leafs are there. It's a big night for them. And these people probably watched the Leafs on TV and had seen me and recognized me. And I don't know. I was getting recognized. They're chanting when I'm in the urinal. I'm freaking out.
That's invasive. That's so invasive.
Right.
You're out here just taking a whiz and someone's like, CJ,
I'll tell you this much.
CJ.
It would have been less of a problem if I was sober, but I was not sober.
Oh my God.
And so it's probably the least fun I've ever had in an NHL rink. I was freaking out the whole time. I was convinced I was going to do something that got me fired or misrepresent the company or something.
Yeah.
Again, nothing happened. We left a little bit early, if I remember. Me and my buddy Kyle, I'm we got to get out of here.
Did you get carried out?
No.
Okay.
No. Sorry, I should be really clear, but
you weren't so bad that you had to get carried.
No, and again, I'm pretty sure I have a selfie from that night, and I look normal. I was freaking out.
How low were your eyes though?
Well, we'll look at it after I'm done here. I'll let you decide off air or off camera. But my point is that that was an awful experience. And I made the mistake of telling Adam Wild that story, and he's like, you got to tell it on the pod.
Oh, man.
Anyway, I have not gone back to the edible well since then.
Okay.
And it's funny, the Leafs are there in December again. And I don't know if I'm being assigned to that trip for work. But I do know if I'm not, I'm going to go out and see my friends and go to the game. But
sober?
Oh, well, I might have a couple beers, which would be totally fine for me.
It's fine.
But I will not be getting anywhere. Whatever Brandon brings in his pocket, whatever Fire and Flower samplers he's got, I'm not touching any of
As
this.
far as I'm concerned, like,
It's Brandon's fault.
yes. Also, know what drugs you take before you take them.
This is
I
like my
guess.
oldest
I don't
friend,
know.
and honestly, I just don't know anything about that. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would laugh if he told you whatever it was. You'd be like, "Wow, that got you freaking out." But I don't.
You looking at me like I know drugs.
No, I know.
I don't
I'm just
drugs that much.
I'm looking at you because I don't know what else to say. But
you know what to say? I don't know nothing about drugs.
yeah, I don't know
I
anything.
don't know nothing about drugs. Don't look at me, brother.
And so, and literally, this is my oldest friend too. Like, I know it's not anything that's going to get me in trouble or anything. Like,
yeah, no, you good.
and we're like 37 at the time or something. Like, it's not like we were going out for a crazy night. It's just
No.
man.
You could have easily told that story and replaced edibles with I drank a bunch of beers. And it would have been the same thing. You would have been like, okay, I'm not, okay, maybe not with you, it's sober.
But I don't think I would have made me paranoid.
No, it wouldn't have done that.
Unless I was like really impaired. And I don't think I would have done that. Again, I was just going to enjoy the game with my buddies. The idea wasn't to get, like, if I wanted to get messed up, you do that afterwards. I was just going to enjoy the game, but whatever, that walk really... Anyway, I'll never look at the Saddledome the same again.
Jesse gave you a weird look just now at my beers analogy, and I don't think he necessarily agreed. So we're going to move on from...
Imagine walking through a crowd and people be like, Chris Johnston. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even want...
CJ. Yeah, I feel like now whenever you see people chant your name, you just get like a bad flashback to walking in the
And at minimum, I'm wearing a hat next time. Like, just to be a little less recognizable.
So I got to ask you that question, and you were so generous enough with your time to tell that story. Let's see what other people...
I've blown out the time for all the rest of the questions.
No way. None of that. Absolutely not. We're definitely going to get to time.
Let the record show, not every story told here makes me look good. Some of them make me look like a moron, like that one.
And that's why people love the Chris Johnston Show, baby.
Oh, well.
That's why people love the show, baby.
By the way, Dad, sorry for that story. I haven't told you that one.
Coburg Poppy, it's all good. It's all good. Your son is still shining. Your son is still doing great things and is still a model citizen in this world. Let's get to Ask CJ.
All right.
Producer's note here. It'd be cool. And I realize now Jesse's right in front of me, and this is going to sound like a demand. He could totally just be like, screw off. But it'd be really cool if we had some like Ask CJ music.
Like a jingle?
Yeah. Or I don't know, just like you have it for like the press conference. Oh, we got a thumbs up. Yes, we got a thumbs up. So Jesse is cool with the idea of us having music for the Ask CJ segment. And maybe for stick taps too. Who? You know what? Let me not press my...
Whoa,
we got thumbs up too. Okay.
Whoa. You're like a kid at Christmas here. You're like, and then, Mom, can I also have this?
Hey, look,
and
man,
that?
I'm already in
that?
I'm already in the building. I'm trying to see what I could get. Anyway, I'm like that. There's a funny meme where it takes from an interview between Denzel Washington and Jamie Foxx. And I think he got nominated for some award somewhere, and there was like food somewhere, and he was trying to leave, and he's like, "I know, I'm leaving here with some." Jesse knows what I'm talking about. Jesse's laughing. He knows what I'm talking about. Let's get to Ask CJ. Your
big win here is a jingle, a small jingle that we'll just play.
Just
Ask CJ.
Oh, save that. Y'all better save that. That was really good. You auto tune it if you have to.
And you still can't put that in tune.
All right. Ask CJ is the segment where we get the lovely listeners and readers at home to send questions to CJ, whether it's through Twitter, whether it's through Discord.
Shout out Discord,
and go on the SDPN website to click on the link for Discord. 8,300 people are on the Discord. Am I correct? I believe I'm correct. Another thumbs up from Jesse. I think I'm like 4 for 4 with that now, or 3 for 3. I don't do math. But yeah, go on the Discord. It's a really good time, and the community is just growing. Really fun time, and you can ask questions like this one from Moni on Discord. CJ mentioned the NHL having preseason games in Mexico a couple of podcasts ago. What do CJ, or you, Julian, think the NHL can do to start that or even reach the Latin market in the United States?
Move a team to Houston.
Sure.
Let's put more teams close to the border. Maybe more seriously though, like I think they've identified it. Look, they have one of the greatest stars in their game is Austin Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
Like his mom, until her early adult years, lived in Mexico. Austin speaks some Spanish, certainly, loves Mexican food. Like he's grown up in that culture. I've been actually at a game in Arizona. Well, I've been to a few, but there was one the Leafs played there December 23rd, right before Christmas. And so the cool thing for him was he was able to stay there for the Christmas break. And there was like 100 of his family members, all from Mexico, had never been to a hockey game, like in the bottom of the rink to greet him afterwards outside the dressing room. Like, just like it hits home when you see, I think sometimes you have to see it to be it. Right. And so you can start by marketing this player in a certain way. And I think I know Austin has interest in having a broader reach in Latin America and trying to help spread the game there. And then you do have teams in Texas. I think that there's something to be said because those teams just are geographically close. They already have probably more Spanish speaking members of their fan bases just naturally because of the demographics of where they're based. I think that would help. And then you got to take games there. And I know, like, okay, so you play one exhibition game in Mexico City. It's not like we're going to produce a Mexican player out of that. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to there's going to be great athletes everywhere, right? You just want the great athletes wherever they are to want to play your sport. Because, Austin's an example of this. Like, he didn't grow up with any hockey in his family whatsoever, like nobody. But he went to an Arizona Coyotes game with his uncle and his dad and wanted to be a hockey player. And I don't think it's a stretch to say, given his size and his athletic abilities, if he devoted himself to baseball or basketball or football, he probably could have found a career somewhere like that. I think most athletes generally, if they had have applied the same fervor to what they perfected, could probably be an athlete in another sport, which is a long way of saying people used to make fun of the Sunbelt strategy of the NHL. Like, that used to be something Gary Bettman got criticized for. I think he deserves praise for it, frankly, because you get an Austin Matthews. It's not uncommon now to have players from California. There's quite a number in the league. There's a few now from Texas. Blake Coleman's a notable one that grew up in Texas. Mm-hmm. We're getting players from those other places, and I'll bring it back to the original point. You want to get the people with athletic abilities to play your sport. And so, I think it starts with leveraging that athlete, using the teams to play down there, hopefully bring some clinics and the like. And actually Boris Dorozenko is his name. It was Austin's, personal skating coach as a kid. He's actually done a lot of work in Mexico. He has camps around Mexico. And so, it's just people like that bringing the sport there and introducing it and trying to get, there's so many challenges, financial is a challenge of hockey everywhere.
Yeah. Accessibility.
It's a challenge in Canada where, a lot of people still play hockey, but it's not easy.
It's more than equestrian.
Right. And you have to build ice. Like if ice doesn't naturally occur where you're trying to play it, you have to artificially create it somehow. And so, in Mexico, that would be the case.
Exactly.
And so, there's costs there, but I think you start small and recognize that the compound interest of good decisions can lead to something crazy like Austin Matthews, becoming the best player in your sport or one of the best players in your sport. I mean, he's kind of one in a million in a sense, just because of his unusual upbringing as it relates to hockey. But there can be more.
Okay. A question coming off of Twitter here. Not only can you ask questions on Discord, you can ask questions on Twitter. CJ uses the Ask CJ hashtag. Some dude named Andrew Berkshire had a question.
Jerkshire.
Yeah. I like Jerkshire. That makes sense. I don't think I've ever heard that before. What's your read on the Montreal Canadiens situation? Surely something has to give at some point soon. This is a team. I mentioned the Vegas Golden Knights, who at one point were outshot 22-1 and were down 2-0. For those who didn't see what happened, they went on to score 5 unanswered goals and win the game 5-2. And then Mike Hoffman, while trying to chase down a puck going into the empty net, ended up going into the boards and crashed and wiped out. And it pretty much sums up the Montreal Canadiens season.
That could be an SDPN meme.
It could easily be an SDPN.
That Hoffman situation.
Oh, it could have been.
Here's the interesting thing about Montreal, right? None of us would be surprised if we said somewhere in the next 8 months, Mark Bergevin is not the general manager.
8 months? You don't think it's sooner?
I'm doing the rough math. His contract runs through, I can't remember the exact date because they've moved contracts, but till early July, give or take.
Sure.
So my point is, by somewhere in early July, it wouldn't surprise us if he ceased to be the general manager of the team. But when you have that as sort of the expectation, almost even if they had done well this year, there's a little less impetus necessarily to fire him. Like normally I think a start like this, people would be calling for the GM. Well, in this case, we kind of know he's not going to be there most likely long-term anyway. So like, what does that accomplish? You've got a head coach who just got a 3-year extension.
Mm-hmm.
Like is Dominique Ducharme losing his job? Like I'd be stunned. Anything's possible. but coaches very rarely get fired when they got to be paid for 3 years. Because there's a financial element to that. Like that's real money off the books coming out of a pandemic. And so I get the spirit of the question that, this has been a disastrous start to the year. I think that Vegas game in some ways sums up their season because they should have won the game. If you're taking a process over results type of approach, like they should have won that game by how they played, but didn't go their way and they didn't find a way to win it and they made mistakes to lose it. And so, yes, like on one hand, something has to give, but on another, I could just see them muscling through it and making the changes that are going to be changed anyway, most likely in the front office, and then go from there. Obviously, as we get closer to the deadline, there'll be some calls to trade their players on expiring contract. A guy like Ben Sherratt makes sense as a potential deadline type of trade because, I think teams can use what he wants, that they want to go on long playoff runs. The Habs can start to, not a rebuild, but just restock the pile a little bit in terms of draft picks. And so I actually don't believe we're going to see, look, if it gets really bad, if they lose like 10 in a row from now,
Heads will roll.
But I'll alter my approach if like this just gets so bad that you can't ignore it. But my sense is that they'll just try to get through this, and then the changes that are coming were already coming, no matter if this was a good season or a bad season.
Yeah, it seems as if with the Canadiens,
you bring up the Ducharme thing, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. I'm sure they still have to pay for Claude Julian's salary, who they fired last season.
Yeah, I think he had at least this year remaining.
Yeah,
it was a 5-year deal originally, and just time is a flat circle because of this pandemic. So my years are getting blended together.
For sure, because I think he became the Canadiens head coach in 2017.
Right.
Yes.
So he would be paid through 2022.
Right.
Meaning he's off the books this year. But yeah, you don't want to be paying 3 head coaches concurrently when only one of them works for you.
Exactly.
So I don't think it's a stretch to say Ducharme's safe for the time being. Now, he might get a new boss if they replace Mark Bergevin, for next season, and then maybe could be a different equation. But yeah, I think it's tough to launch a Game Over Montreal podcast. Or maybe it's not, because sometimes chaos makes good content too. Because this has been a chaotic start to the season for the Habs. It's been a chaotic year. I know we've talked about that before, but feels like everything has happened to this team. Some good, mostly bad lately. But I don't see a firing in the immediate future.
If you want chaos on the Game Over podcast on the Saturday edition after the Detroit Red Wings game, Andrew Berkshire and I will be eating chicken wings with the Hot One sauce. So I figured, let's plug that in when we speak of chaos here. So check out.
You're braver than I am.
Yeah, I am brave and stupid. Let's get to the next question here. Any further updates to the Akim Aliu situation? Last we heard Bill Daly say that the investigation had concluded, which Aliu's representation said was news to them. Any further conversation between the two sides? Akim Aliu, we know, was in the Chicago Blackhawks organization in 2010, where he was subjected to racial abuse from then head coach Bill Peters. Bill Peters eventually lost his job when he was coaching the Calgary Flames as a result. And yes, during the Gary Bettman press conference, the question was asked about Akim Aliu, and Bill Daly did say the investigation was done, which then led to the representation of Akim Aliu saying, hey, that's news to us.
I don't have an update.
That's fine.
I reached out to his rep in the U.S. And didn't hear back. And I haven't followed up since. So I should follow up on that, but I haven't heard what's been the fallout since the Gary Bettman, Bill Daly press conference there.
Okay. So that's fine. Next question.
I did ask a question. I just don't have the answer.
That's fine. And it's okay if you don't have those answers. How about, so we've gone through 3 of these. There's 2 of them. One of them is actually both, I think, more lighthearted. So I'll let you pick. Do you want the happy question or do you want the Bitcoin question first?
Let's just go happy. I'm getting a lot of heat for the Bitcoin thing. I'm trying to cool my jets on that a little publicly.
All right. That's fair. Here's the thing about Bitcoin. The Bitcoin question is not like, is Ethereum good? It has to do with hockey. But here's the happy question. There has been a bunch of heavy news, of course. Can you share a story about something you're really happy about hockey-wise? This is from Mick Drew on Discord. Something you're really happy about hockey-wise.
Man, there hasn't been that much.
Man, that's actually kind of sad.
Well, but
also understandable considering what's going on.
I mean, look at the stories we've been covering.
Yeah.
And these stories aren't happening to us directly.
No.
But you feel the weight of them. you know, I know a lot of the people involved. You know, I see the discourse on Twitter. There's a fair bit going on.
Yeah, there is a fair bit going on with everything going on.
But I should give an answer. I mean, I'm an optimistic kind of guy.
I don't know. Here's the thing. I wonder if like Rick Drew would be okay with just like, I don't know, you had some conversation with some player and some funny thing happened.
Right, but we can't even talk to guys really. You know, like
that's true.
I do miss that. I don't want to. I know that there's no time out there for media people complaining about the challenges of being a media person when you got a great job. But
yeah, I get that.
But it's not been the same. Like I do miss the social aspect of the job. It's good to be face to face, as we're finding out here today.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like that might actually I know it's not necessarily directed at me, but like I'm happy about the fact that I get to do a podcast with you in studio,
right?
And I think that would technically count because this is hockey, you know.
You know, I had a guy stop me this morning and tell me how much he's enjoying the podcast. Zach.
Shout out Zach.
And he said he's been an SDPN listener / viewer for a number of years. He's pumped about what they're doing. You know, obviously in the DMs and stuff, I've got tons of great feedback. And so, you know, maybe I'll turn it a little bit navel gazy and just say that one thing that has me feeling good, you know, is that we get to do this. And you know, it's been a lot of fun to talk hockey, but you know, it's been a heavy couple weeks. I'm not going to lie.
That's fine.
And I'm not going to pretend I can't see beyond it. Honestly, like I've even been to a couple games, and like for me, going to games is fun. Like, you know, because you just sit there and you're like, oh my God, like I'm getting paid to be here. Like, you know, like it's still pretty cool. And I've been to a lot of games, but even the games just haven't been quite as fun, I would say. And you know, it's because there's real shit going on in this sport and this league. And I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of it in the sense, or I don't feel as though it's just like, okay, that was taken care of. Let's move along. And so, you know, I'm not excited in the way that I normally would be, but I'll get back.
But
we'll all get back.
Here's what I'll end that off with. I can't imagine what it's been like for hockey fans in general. I mean, Kyle Beach is a whole other story in itself in terms of what he had endured over the last decade and plus. But I understand we're a lot closer to the fans. We're a lot closer to hockey media, and we see what they've been going through over the last little while. And I'm not trying to say it's bigger than what's gone on to the parties involved with the Chicago Blackhawks, but from what we see, yeah, we have endured this, and we have been feeling a little bit down as a result. But what makes me feel inspired and what makes me feel happy is that there are people who are recognizing what's gone on, and even if they weren't on the story from jump, they are starting to use their platforms to bring attention to the story, bring attention to maybe what they could have done better with the story, but also just trying to provide updates on what's going on. And then also you have the people who are going to the press conferences, whether it's with the Blackhawks or whether it's with Bill Daly and Gary Bettman, and they're asking their questions. And also there are people who have probably seen what has gone on, and they may have learned for the future, and they're saying, you know what, like let's try to ultimately make hockey culture better, because essentially at the end of the day, that's what has to happen. And what's been cool for me is just seeing people like yourself, other people in media who have stepped up and written stories and asked questions, and also just people who I know are like hockey fans who are using their platforms to bring attention to that stuff for people who already were, who want to continue to do that. I don't know how people would have reacted to this if this happened 10 years ago even, or 20 years ago. But we're in a much different time in this space where people want the game to be better. It's going to be tough for it to be better because there are a lot of people in positions of power who frankly need to get the hell out of there because they're not doing anything in terms of progressing the game where it needs to be. But there are people who want to be arbiters of change, and I don't think we're more important than any other podcast out there, but I'd like to think that our podcast is a part of that positive change.
Right, and I'm seeing a lot of younger people around the sport now, which is cool, like in media. Like yourself, Julian, getting to know you better. You know, Mike Stevens in Toronto here, who's like getting to come to the rink now. He's doing great work. He's doing some work for the Hockey News now. You know, Rachel Dory, someone I've known personally a little bit over the years. Like, we've just got more and more Dom Lucian Sorry if I
Yeah,
butchered
you
your
got.
name,
Yeah, I
Dom.
think, you got his name right. Dom Luszczyszyn is in that. I think Avery Lewis McDougall, also at the Hockey News, deserves a shout out as well.
Yeah, like I do feel encouraged by some of these people in different spots getting chances. You know, it's one thing that occurred to me. I was really lucky to do this job young, but it was a different media world I came up in. There was more of a feeder system to basically going from someone who had a lot of ambition to be a hockey journalist to, you know, the kind of career I've had. There was kind of a more established roads to doing that then. You know, there's obviously lots of opportunity now. If you invest in one of these microphones, you can start your own podcast. I realize it's one thing to do that, another thing to build a following, but you know, there's ways for people to get at it now, but it's just cool to see you guys like knocking down some doors. And I do think you're also bringing a different tone to the coverage, you know, different vibe on Twitter. But I'm saying that in a good way.
No, I understand. I have the vibe I have because I am who I am.
But I'm feeling encouraged about where things are going big picture. It's just the last couple of weeks have been so heavy. It's hard to, I had to like remove myself from the moment to see, you know, the forest for the trees.
I think, and I understand there was the one question there, but I think that's a pretty good way to end it.
Sure.
For this week's edition, for today's edition of the Chris Johnston Show.
I understand you blew off Mike to do our podcast. You were supposed to have coffee with him.
So yeah, but don't worry about it. We'll make up our plans.
You said you slid in the DMs, you made a plan, and then you bailed.
Also, Mike shouldn't be talking because the last time I was here, I'm going to put you on blast, buddy. Last time I was here, I sent him a DM. He left me on red. He didn't even acknowledge the fact that I wanted to hang out with him last time. So the fact he went on Twitter and did that, he did me dirty, bruh.
Wow,
he's supposed to be friends.
That's a foul. Actually, I didn't know about the first one.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I saw the tweet. I was like, "Oh, you want to go there? Okay." Because I tried to hang out with him last time. He didn't even acknowledge me, bro.
Well, does he not know that trains and planes and automobiles go the other way to Montreal too?
Hey,
like he can come see you.
Hey, you can come see me.
Doesn't always have to be you coming here.
I'm a fan of Mike Stevens. I want to see the brother grow. But you know, you just want to get your clicks on Twitter. You just want to get your dunking. Enjoy your wife leaving you, bro. Yeah, I said what I said. Anyway. Subscribe to the SDPN YouTube page. Subscribe to Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. Agent Provocateur, our sister show on the podcast, goes out tomorrow. Alan Walsh, Alan Walsh, Adam Wilde hosts the show, and Martin Havlet. If you're not a West Senators fan, you're gonna like this. Martin Havlet is this week's special guest.
Are you allowed to say that? I'm not sure the Havlet news was out there.
Did I just break something?
Breaking news. Sorry, Alan.
Well, it's out there now. Martin Havlat will be on this week's edition of Agent Provocateur.
One of the great gentlemen. I got to know Martin Havlat during his days in the league. He was a great player and really good guy to deal with media-wise.
Well, he's going to be on the podcast. I can't wait to listen to it. I'm trying to remember another AKA I was trying to come up for you. I mentioned you were the Don of Division Street, but what's the name of the big main road in Coburg again?
Well, King Street is probably the main one. I could be the King of King Street.
You be the King of King Street?
I could be the Henry Street is another street.
You're the Henry Hombre.
Yeah, the hombre of Henry Street.
The hombre of Henry Street. So
that's another one near and dear to my heart.
Yes, of course. Oh, on the subject of Coburg, go to the shop on the SDPN website and buy CJ Show merch because we have merch for the show and it's glorious and it's amazing.
Coburg Papa's he's emptied the shelves. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it.
He's got laptop stickers. Anyway, for CJ, I'm Julian saying so long. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We'll be back on Thursday with stick taps and anything else the NHL world will bring us.
Grab bag.
Yes. Oh, we bringing the grab bag back. All right, let's do it. Grab bag on Thursday and other fun stuff as well. Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show. Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.